So we're gonna charge up.
What else do we need? It's on TV.
Sipping on tea. A little cognizance issue going on here. I gained a couple pounds yesterday eating oatmeal cookies. We made some oatmeal cookies with a lot of butter. Honey. What I've been finding is that people are nuts, as we know, but that reality itself can be bent and changed, and that there are specific people that have more or less of a prominence to do so. And how this works, I have no idea. Like, is it preordained in the sense of these people were put together in some sort of laboratory experiment, or were they given grace to some sort of ability? I have this fucking hip issue too. I don't know what the fuck is going on. This keeps popping. I don't know. I had put on like 45 pounds from last year, and it ain't all good. What's up, peeps? Yeah, on this channel I discuss real topics. I'd say fitness is a real topic. I would say eventually you'll battle with weight, and that's a real topic. And existential crisis, like what the fuck's going on, and how far do you have your head shoved up your ass, or how far are you hiding from reality, from the reality of the situation? Let's just put it like that. We can't definitively say if we're trapped in some fucking crystalline structure, quasi structure at absolute zero, in some quantum fucking machine, or that we're not some smoke and aphorisms, essentially just coded program tucked into a computer system. But the reality that we do have, right, that is not the default, is always a choice. And it's the choice to either improve things around you and realize that you can't change or improve or disapprove people. So what happens is people end up doing like this song and dance, and it becomes evaluation of their own personal value and how they're perceived. So you think that on YouTube, on social media, that your chances of affecting reality improve as your perceived value increases, but that's not the way reality is. The horde then has a consensus over you, and you'll find that whatever you allow them to think that you are determines what and how closely related the truth of what you think you are, or the truth of the code within you, versus what you allow yourself to be swayed as a mean. And that these are just two parallels. There's more parallels occurring here. These are occulted parallels. And if that sounds weird to you, then where the fuck have you been hiding? Because that is reality, and that's always been reality. Hello, bro. Christopher Zwings. So I'm getting up very late. I'm gonna start walking. I'm trying to charge my phone. And this is more of a community reality channel. But when we say reality, we're talking about real reality. We're talking about the reality of using your mind to prove or disprove what reality is. And the problem is that the interconnectedness with people poses issues, and that people can't be pure, and that's the only solution is purity, right? And that if we can't become more pure in ourselves, in other words, the expressions that are principle oriented, right? But what are we originally, what are we made of, and where are we going? Right? This honest, transparent truth isn't even something that you can get from yourself. Essentially, social media exists so that you can be divergent and hide from that. So I'm gonna make some cream of wheat. Reality of the situation. I had a really successful YouTube channel back in 2007, 2008. I was a world-class trainer. Like I literally was a world-class personal trainer that worked for Equinox Fitness, living out of my Mercedes because I had 65 clients and taught. I won a lawsuit that didn't claim, but found out, discovered from the lawyers that I worked 17 and a half hours a day. And I won lots of awards in training, kept myself really fit, and got into this whole, like, I understand, and it was around the Palo Alto area at that time. And I knew all my clients were like multi-millionaires and fucking billionaires. And that whole God complex thing, I understand it because I lived it. I was pretty much given this I was pretty much worshipped on one regard, and then the more real that I would be, the more real I'd become, which I didn't really understand what the fuck that was, right? There's this profane animalistic aspect to existence that, and it's considered enlightenment. It's like once your eyes can see, once you realize that you have a choice to either ingratiate yourself and continue the illusion and sacrifice other people for it, right? And when you finally realize I'm supposed to sacrifice my time and my life with this other person that I love, what is love? And you begin to get really, you not only go into deep contemplation about that yourself, but you're taken through a process that shows this is who you really are, right? And you're either a very self-sacrificing person or you sacrifice other people, and you're essentially code, and you're writing your own code, but you are expounding upon the code of who you really are. And there's a left-hand path and a right-hand path. There are two realities, two systems that are working simultaneously. And so when they give you Christianity, when they give you all these other Masonic religions, and they're taking you through the great work, right? You are the great work. And whatever side you stand on, those sides don't just vaporize and disappear into nothingness, right? But they feed into a central persona. And that's why people tend to amalgamate. They become chimeras where they're nearly indistinguishable, right? So you have this very generic system that happens in communism. Everybody looks the same, everyone performs the same, everyone thinks the same, and eventually everybody moves almost like a school of fishes, right? But then you have this connotation of the best we can do is create angelic beings, angelic hosts, self-emanating. I've done a lot of study into the Gnostic systems, archives, and many other areas over the years. They don't have the same available features on the internet as they did 15 and 20 years ago. So I'm making some cream of wheat. Waking up. Getting a little fat, so playing with that. Trying to stay anabolic. If I put butter on this, that's how you get fat. You want to separate fat from carbohydrates. And all anybody wants is entertainment. They want to hide from what I'm talking about. Hide from reality, hide from the truth. And so we get into the fact that if you could change reality, right? If you could change the world around you, how it functions, even on some level, right? Even on some level, that you could alter the physics, but you can't change people. And people obviously will invariably change from the environment they live in. What changes in the environment would you make? And the most immature answer is I would just make it so everybody gets along. And so you would make a happy, warm, moderate climate, kind of like it is, where food is plentiful. And so you jump toward this egalitarian conceptualization, and then you realize there's just more porn going on. How could people do this? There's just more alcoholism. There's just more of this. There's just more of that. Oh, the coffee industry dried up, right? Because now there isn't this isolated shift, right? At 40 degrees south equator. So nobody really likes the coffee anymore, or coffee became really premium and could only be grown in certain habitats and ways, right? So the structure of everything changes, right? So when you take all this into consideration and you realize that I made it a little bit too cream of wheat. When you take this into consideration and you start to think about gold, precious metals, not only that, but diamonds that can be made in laboratories, you go, what if gold could be made better? What if diamonds could be made better? What if the value of gold and the value of diamonds dramatically changed and people only preferred the gold that could be used, that almost had like a nano type infusion where these nanobots could live forever? They could take the gold to places inside your body. Motherboards could recombinate. Computer systems could morphologically change into something else. Like we're talking about the processing ability, speed, but even more so, transform from a supercomputer to a quantum system, and even go within you and change the very structures of your steroidogenesis, carbon skeleton. I mean, you name it. Anything that can be changed and altered would be. Right? What would be the mind behind this? What would dictate what, Jesus and God aren't an answer, okay? Not anymore, not ever, okay? It's never worked, never will work, and it's something that the profane hide behind. And some of the most profane people are the people who hide behind it. It doesn't work anymore. And somebody on one of the podcasts that I like to watch, I don't remember what it was. I think it was the Inverted World podcast, call-in thing. But people were saying, young, millennials or, this generation, that generation, they're turning toward Christianity. And it's like, no, they're not. People are searching for principles, and they're becoming more devout. They're trying to become more devout in their belief systems, but as a result, the only thing left is dogma. And then they're beginning to realize how dogmatic they are, and they're trying to find an escape for it. And the first thing that we do is we start judging other people. So it starts to make sense why this social system, why this social order was put into play. Because what happens is it was all slowed the process of human development and learning who you are was heavily slowed to the point where you would never even know who you were throughout an entire lifetime, where you just feel a strong wind blowing through a town and that's enough to create a change, right? Like there are towns like that there was no rush for thought, there was no expectation or immediacy toward anything at all. Wondering if I should get a little protein powder. I think my son left this out here, but I'm tapping into his. He's got a whole nother identical one over there. That's my excuse. I'll have to thank him for it later. And every movement we make needs to be transparent. We have to be honest. And so how far does that honesty extend to, when you use your first lie every single day, right? And you're planning to lie, and we do this, you're codifying a number subset that is then imprinting a directive in the system that you reside within. The avatar, the bodysuit, and the communication to the outside world, which there isn't one, there's just a field processing that takes place. We live in the muck and the mire of the computer. We are an aspect and a part of it. And to say that we're not, you have to go on a microbiological level and really begin to start looking at what Dr. Michael Levin is doing research on. So he's the one who came up with anthrobots and xenobots. And it's not that humans behave differently than microorganisms, which you have no justification to say yes or no, right? In particular, because when you release the construct, the parameters, the geometrical parameters, the morphic resonance, what was it called? I put it up as a, I don't know, it's down in community posts. But I was talking about this subject and it was being discussed, which is geometric fields and how there doesn't have to be a reason, a solution, or an outcome. There just needs to be the implied codified system set before us. And a choice limiter to where, do you go in the direction of how you feel, right? You feel a sensation, so you go in that direction. So that's exactly what is considered the profane, right? The animalistic. Even if you feel happy, soothing, sad, happy. So we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, allowing Plutchik's wheel to take place. Because I need food to be able to do that, right? So the hot debate today, this permeates into socioeconomic wings or arms that are a part of the supply chain, because you need to stand behind a certain belief, right, or an ideology. So the belief has a diet, the belief has a religion, because you do things religiously, repetitively every single day. So when you begin to back up and you see, okay, what are the main tenets to my belief system? And lo and behold, you have these 6 points, these 6 main points. Back up a little further, you have these subdivisions of other tenets, principles, right? And you can then backward engineer and see what your main tenet or what your main principle is. And a lot of people who seem like they're very self-sacrificing and self-giving, they're actually just doing this in a way where they're balancing out entropy. Their whole goal is to get stuff at the end of the day. And so, of course, their whole goal is to get more subscribers, right? That's why they open their mouth up in the first place. It isn't the unification and the community and all the things they talk about. And through that barking, through that expression, you are picking up on it, and you know that it's happening. You know that it's taking place. And what we've done is we've forgiven ourselves and it's like going into a confessional, and ahead of time you know that it's going to cost you $100,000 to be forgiven, but you'll pay it, right? And prior to, the church is expecting that $100,000, right? and it's like you're forgiven. And then imagine if you really were forgiven, like if you felt every bit of weight lifted off of you. So I mean, art imitates life, life imitates art. It's becoming like a video game where it's like, how could that even be possible, right? So when they say the God of this world is Satan, the God of this world are principalities that function in a way. So why do we have within us the ideation of goodness? Why do we, and we don't all, like that's used as a bartering tool, you understand? So why do some of us really, so is it guilt? Did you become a better person initially? And who were you when you were a little kid, right? And what is this bullshit personality, this veneer that you take for yourself, that society crafted, right? So it gets into Nietzsche's slave morality, right? Is that we get to a place where we go, well, you can't handle the same stress that a kid can. You don't have the morphological ability to change. You're not producing the growth hormone, your hormones aren't in that type of balance. So you become solidified, and you start to take on more stoic beliefs as if you decided to become a person that accepts conditions as they are and does your very best. That's not what you're doing. No, you kicked and screamed and you got your way. People, somehow the system started to give you enough to survive. And then you bitch and scream and go on social media and try to find others that you can amalgamate yourself with in a collective, in a community, and not only and find a way, a position to berate others. That's the human condition. That is, in a nutshell, exactly what we all do. It's kind of boring, but you want to know what makes it not boring? Is that then you get into the idea of the things that are talked about. You know, last year it was really popular, the whole thing with Joe McGonigal and remote viewing. And then it was popular at the end of the year last year to start talking about Jake Barber and the and this idea of a Hathor, a holy lady who also, you know, this entity, right? Really kind of a from a Matrix perspective, the Matrix, the movie, you know, kind of this oracle, right? So we get into the fact that you can change reality, but people don't change that way, right? People don't change instantaneously. So as you change the environment with your mind and you begin to alter reality, slowly you begin to see how cause and effect work on not only the people around you as they get older, as they age, and as they age out, as they die away. And these cycles, from a zodiacal perspective, and it's true, they work in 3.3 year cycles, they work in 5 year cycles, 6 year cycles, 7 year cycles. Just look back at your life and look at the changes and the alterations. Everybody's done it. Look at the number that shows up on a screen all the time. Right, so they look into numerology and gematria as an explanation for this, right? And not an explanation of an encapsulation of what it is, but that it is. And you get into teleology, eschatology, obviously ontology, and then outcomes, right? Where people want to stay on this. So even though if you have the ability to think in a doxastic way, a multifarious, multiplanar way, right? To be able to see how all these systems integrate into one, you then have to, and you know, this is why Nietzsche said he hates systems, yet there he was devising the system. He hated himself for supplicating and slipping back into the fact that even if he went as far back as he could, but definitively towards Zoroastrianism, found the most pure and holy person, right? All you'd really find is just left out information. And when you really found out about the truth, the individual never even existed. It was a movement. It's why they create figureheads, Messiah figures. And you can believe what you want, but the reason that you believe what you want is because you don't read the Bible every day. If you did, you'd be inducted into the magic and the ceremonial ritualistic process that is truly involved. Prayer. And what I've always told people is you have pray, P-R-A-Y, and you have pray, P-R-E-Y. And when people are praying, they're doing both. It's why you feel zapped after you leave church. Mother Circe, Mother Church. You gave something. And even more so, they pass around that offering because that's the original way to get you to hook the like button, right? It's when you feel guilty and you have nothing to give in your mind, you feel that and you're giving. And when you're in a process of giving your energy, the entire system is set up to take your energy. That's why you feel zapped when you leave church. Don't lie. And when you really try to get into it, you try to feel it and groove with it, right? And you're going to like a church where everybody's raising their hands up and Lord, 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 Lord. And then they just make up all this bullshit, right? They're imbuing and imbibing energy into it, and they're expecting an outcome. So they're putting on this performance, and they think, oh, as a collective, maybe we can energize into the system and get something back out of the system. Same thing happening with Mecca, where you're just walking around in circles, walking to the left, walking to the left. If you were underneath those people, they're walking to the right, okay? They're performing for something underneath the ground. And it gets into the circumpunct concept, or the stellar mass symbol. And even more so, when you look at circumpunct, the dot in the center of, it's really a sphere, right? Or an orb, right? And this is what makes everything work. Gyration, flux. That which is in the center is constantly under flux. So if you were to stay with a rigid protocol of belief, you would have virtually no flux at all, therefore no entropy. And then, but then you're still dealing with the total enthalpy. If you have immutable, right? Where people one day can choose one thing and then it seems right to choose something else. That is, like, it seems so cryptic. Mountain Dew, I think Doritos gets into this. I've heard that guy Leak Project, Rex Bear, talk about this, but I never refer people to channels where they just try to sell you Bitcoin and take your money. And that guy's full of shit. He always has been full of shit. So you have these very entertaining people who are like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, hello, my ragtime gal. Okay, you like me? Do you think I'm funny? Give me money, right? They've always been doing this shit. They're not actually entertaining. At the end of the day, what you're looking for is a break in consistency. You're going, holy shit, I see this person. I've been watching them for years, and now I see them for who they are. And even more so, what caused you to see is when you realize that people who have 50 to 70,000 subscribers and are getting regular views are now, this guy, Eek Acres, Kevin, every time he starts to lose people because he's got such a shallow belief system, and I hate to say that about him because he's really unhealthy and you can tell that he's actually probably dying. And that's how people get subs these days. It's like, oh, this person's dying. And they have a Patreon or they have a GoFundMe page. They're dying. So they're not competition for me anymore. Admit it, people. And so I'm going to throw $10 their way. And I don't mind that they're making a certain amount of money. But getting back to Kevin with Eek Acres, he disclosed he makes about $7,000 a month. And he's making a living off of it. And so suddenly there's a disingenuine aspect to everything he does because you realize he knows he has to pump into the algorithms. He sees people as a pain in the ass. He's very stuck in his ways, but he's a very small thinker. And we see pocketed of nuances of small thinkers, right? That are, we're all being exposed. I'm not casting stones at Kevin. I actually watch his channel. I like watching it. Don't get me wrong. About the same age, I identify with him. But to look at the reality of this and go, this is the truth about why. I'm going to walk, and this is going to be kind of boring. And my son is, he's an author. He's really trying to push a book, and he is a musician, so he's really working here. You know, music, writing, these are all scripts and stuff. And so the place looks a little bit disheveled and dirty. But I'm gonna walk in indoor. Okay. So it's time to go for a little walkie. I have a little charge going on here. So authentic, inauthentic. It gets into the areas of the eye of the beholder. We are, so here's the complex and the perplexing aspect to what's going on here. And this is what people begin to realize, and then it blows them away. And this is very much discussed in the Gospel of Truth. When you get into Coptic Gnostic text, I highly recommend the Gospel of Truth, the Gospel of Mary, or Mary Magdalene, even more so the Gospel of Judas Iscariot, and the Gospel of Thomas. Now, there's like John and James and many others, but I think if you were only to read a few of these, it's very interesting because what it's talking about is it's talking about the phenomenon of existence. And it's telling you, and the Gospel of Truth is amazing as well. Sounds like it was written yesterday. But what it's talking about is it's putting you in the eye as the eye of the observer, right? And it's saying, look, this is you, but this is also you. Yeah, you're a Mary. You're a Jesus. You're a Mary. You're a James. You're a Judas Iscariot, right? You're all these concepts, and when you break it down, this is just a moment in transition, a moment in time through a tempo, a time signature, and all you're ever playing with is when you think you are a particular held concrete sort of way, right? And the original religion, especially if you get into studying Ralph Ellis, Michael Tessarian, and many other people, and their assertions that when they're looking at Jesus as a figurehead, as a potential person who actually existed, and to some extent, Neil with Gnostic Informant, is that they get into this idea that that it's a transitory energy, right? You are all of these personas in the pantheon, right? Is how it was expressed and told then. But then people started to worship one particular, and this is what demon worship is. It's where you no longer see the transitory aspect of energy convoluting, moving, amalgamating, becoming, fluxing, growing. That no longer is of interest to people. It's becoming a fixed, concrete aspect of the whole that always seems to land on their feet and is, I mean, you see it happen. So that's why people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they're trying to go through this flux, but at the same time, they're trying to stay fixed to a particular persona or character, and they can't break out of it. So they hire other people to do the type of diabolical thinking that got them in the position, which is taking advantage of other people, selling on emotion, offering something that's completely inept that was available at one time free to everyone, and now you're charging premium dollars for it. And then invariably and inevitably supplicating and sucking up to a government system of an entity that we can't see, but could be backward engineered, because when we look at the government, we look at it and we go, these are all the belief systems. And this is where we're at now. It's where you could put down on a piece of paper and go, what is the government's main tenets and belief systems? And what you'll find is that there's a global entity that exists that has the power to backward engineer itself. And that sounds really bizarre, but if it existed before, if it's a system of belief that always would be and always would become, well, this concept of Lucifer or Columbia or, the Statue of Liberty, Satana, Prometheus, however you want to identify it, would invariably not have to show themselves, because the energetics are already there, right? So we're supplying the energy to these wings, to these arms, and really it leads into Harry Potter and many other things, because that is Voldemort. That is Voldemort. Like, whatever your eyes see is real, is reality. So if I'm a growing God, why would I want you to view me? Why would I want you to cast your spells on me when I don't have an endpoint to my growth, right? Gets a little bit into Fantastic Four and Galactus, right? Which sounds Galactus. I say Galactus. So we're doing a little walking, possibly a little preparatory, just a blood flow, oxygen. So this gets into the eye of the beholder and people becoming an entity or an energy. And it seems like people then, as a collective, have a power. But it's actually a pre-engineered energy that is identified through where the money goes, where the worship goes, in the grid and on the motherboard in your town, where the church is, where the Masonic Hall is, where the library is, where the police station is, where that main restaurant is in every single town that was once probably a trading post, right? Where the gates to the town might have been. Those things are all operationally still there, you just can't see them. It's an energy system. It's an agreed upon consensus, but it formed you as a wing, as an arm, right? From its energy, just by design, right? Just by design. So it's always been, because it's what people always choose. People always choose it, ironically, because they are fashioned and created around it. Because even though it's a relatively immoral system, it is morality. It gives classes, it gives basis for, say, case law. Like, so this is what you want, cause and effect. Maybe a little bit of Occam's razor, right? Where it's like, when you begin to finally realize that, so what you're positing and what you're postulating is, you're saying you want your cake and eat it too, but that's not the way it works. So grow up and realize that this person walks past your car every day. It could be any banal, mundane situation that just bothers you. And their dog shits right near your car. All right, so we need to get more arbitrary. We need to go back and become the arbiter, right? Or see through the eyes of the arbiter and go, look, we have to set policies, precedent, and laws, right? Nobody. How many of you want dogs to poop on the ground? Maybe one or two crazy people raise their arms, but it's always for a self-preserving reason, right? And of course, their ideas change whimsically, and they're the biggest argument, you know. They're the ones that are fueled and yelling. You can see their veins in their fucking neck, right? And then next thing you know, next year they're doing the same thing, and they're now arguing an antithetical view, right? So the higher laws look at this and they go, how practical are you? Right? So then you get into matriculation and you get into education and you get into the fact that, okay, now you're vetted. You've passed this certain degree, this standard, and we know that you have read a certain amount of philosophy, a certain amount of law, and that you understand a little more so just by the expression of trying to achieve something you've and having to do some sort of physical education on top of that throughout your career at some point through matriculation. You have now been exposed to everyone. Everyone has seen you to some degree, even though there's always this private or secret self there, right? But we know that you're capable of thinking in such a way. So now we're going to ask you this question, but we're going to ask you the questions that have to do with intelligent choices, right? So then you get people who graduate at the top of their class, which doesn't make any fucking difference. And everyone's a technician now anyway, and degrees are worthless. But do you understand what I'm saying? Is that this is what these initiatory programs were really dealing with and are really about, and what the degrees and Freemasonry are really all about. It's the exposure and the understanding, and then the vetting of information and how it's used and how information is exchanged and the just decisions that are made. Because the truth is, the decisions that you have to make where you're contemplating deeper abiding laws, right, that hearken ever closer to a true systematic order of how all things work, right? You want to get into the ontology of it. You want to have this understanding. But you can't have that sort of understanding if you're functioning under the guise of self-preservation, because inevitably, you will alter and you will change. You have to want growth for this to occur, in other words. So what the inverted pentagram is about is going, look, you reached your end point. You reached your cap. You can't transition and become any better. You can't become any greater. And even more so, you've realized that there isn't better. Once you think you are better and you've done this, now you're over here zodiacally in this other pond, in this other pool, right? Where you have more influence of the Taurus, right? It's like it's telling you it doesn't work that way. The more you express, the more you push, the more male you think you're being, you have these other constructs or constants that are happening through this planetary pole, right? Where now this is affecting another aspect of you on another date, on another time, right? So when you get into these scales, the scales change every day. They change moment by moment. It's always under flux. And only those that follow the pure divine principle understand this. And when it comes down to it, there's just two choices only. It's simplified for us. You either have purity or impurity, right? And this is what that means, is you either have sacrificing other people for the greater good. And so you'd have to identify exactly what the fuck that means, because that's cryptic. Or you sacrifice yourself for, you could say, the greater good, but different terminology is used here because it's not the greater good. In other words, it's not how a dysfunctional society can continue on and everybody feels like they're able to go to Starbucks. No, that's not even democracy or egalitarianism. That is communism. That's what true communism is. Don't you understand? That eventually you're going to, so that whole debate about the straws and then Trump throwing out the choice to use paper straws, that was a big deal actually. right? Because pretty soon it's like, why use the green Starbucks logo? Why use a logo at all? Why use nice countertops or lighting when you go in there? Oh, these things are all sales pitches. Don't you just want coffee? And pretty soon, what happens through the process of this? So you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, the midpoint, what make the reasons why it doesn't work and why it's not sustainable. When you get into sustainability, it is communism. So capitalistic fascism, right? That is really what's going on here. It's capitalistic fascism, right? So everyone really wants the capitalistic fascism, and that's where we are right now. You've got your capitalistic fascist leader. You want to be one of them. The populace shows you this is how you get stuff, and you want to be that. But you don't understand is how they stay so humble. And you think, wow, Elon Musk is such a down-to-earth guy. Or Mark Zuckerberg, he's a human being. What you don't see is the fact that what I'm talking to you about is that once you say you're taking on this responsibility and you're abusing it at all and you think you're God, no. The main energy where all this is going says, no, you work for me, bitch. And they have all been met directly with that realization, that holy crap moment, right? Come to Jesus moment. But it's not Jesus, because that's not Jesus they serve. To serve tyrannical fascist capitalism, which is what it is, wanting people to bow to you, trying to create your own country. Don't you see, if they were left without monitor, they would build their own planet, they would build their own moon, they would build their own satellite. We're talking about Amazon, Facebook. They would build their own planet. And then they would talk people into following them. So the people that live under the delusion, and it is, but it is not just a paracosm. See, they want to escape their own paracosm and pull others in to their delusion. They're the most dangerous people of all. But in learning the process and them still being alive, unlike Bernie Madoff, right? Where Bernie Madoff discovered it. He discovered the way the system works. Yeah, it's just that simple. You're stealing from people. The only thing he didn't do was pay his taxes, because they would have backed him up, just like the shit that's going on with Epstein. Anyway, this is real deep shit, right? It's real deep. We're going to do a little walk. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll time it's like, if you're going to complain about curtains and you're going to start looking at the environment, well, throw me some money and we'll make changes to the curtains. Throw me some money, we'll make changes to the workout. And how do you throw money? Well, you don't have to give any money at all. You just like, subscribe, and share. So if you want to see changes, improvements, that's how you do it. Otherwise, don't give advice, don't give suggestions, don't even give criticisms, because what you're doing is you're putting yourself out there and you're saying, I give a shit about this person's perceived environment. Or even more so, I acknowledge that this person isn't some AI and that they actually exist. Right? And that I, by giving my opinionation about said environment, right, or said behavior, I am a part of it. Don't say anything at all. Don't even say anything unless you're willing to make and affect a change, and that means that you're going to have to do something, right? And that's what backing a community is. And there's many good communities where people have actually literally died. So this guy Kevin with Eacakers, he's an interesting one. I personally think he's a sellout for money to the day he dies. That's how I see the guy, because that's how I see people. I don't see the good in people. I see through people, and I see what makes people tick, and that's just the truth. It's the truth of the situation. And in that, I have to see myself, and I have to go, these are the aspects of what makes me me. I think this is the last day that I can actually eat a little bit of this beef liver. Very dry. Might even make me sick here. Yeah. That's what it tastes like when it goes bad. This is the first time I've thrown away all that. So we had some cream of wheat. I think I might have to make a cup of coffee. So in the coming months, I'll put on quite a good bit of lean muscle mass. And I think my other channel will start popping at that point. But I'll be posting. Got no money, phone bills due in 3 days. And I'm not a beggar. I accept things as they are. So I'm going to try to, I'm going to see what this phone is capable of doing once my phone service is canceled. I'm a locked phone that I owe $800, $800, $900 for still. And see, allegedly owe that much. And see where that takes me. There's so many new channels on YouTube, and we still supplicate. We go toward this venue where we want to feel comfortable. So we're making some coffee. I'm trying to charge this phone up, and I want to move. So I should have charged last night, but it becomes an annoyance, becomes an impractical annoyance. We're making a little coffee. There's the coffee. So I got to see if I'm going to get a workout here today. I want to work out all the time, but the thing is once you start going more intense with the sessions and you change what you're eating, the energy dynamics change considerably. Yeah, that smells good. Smells like coffee. That's Walmart coffee. It kind of looks and tastes like mold. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm gonna add a little cream maybe. Nah, even the cream will make you fat. I don't want to deal with that right now.